In the dimly lit office of Harrison High School, Principal Harvey Sloan sat slumped at his desk. The room, a quiet sanctuary for much of his tenure, now felt suffocating. Piles of papers, complaints from parents, behavioral reports, and dire warnings from teachers were stacked high on his desk. An avalanche of problems he couldn't seem to stop. His mug of coffee, untouched and cold, sat forgotten near his elbow. Harvey rubbed his temples, his once steady resolve worn thin by months of chaos. For over 2 decades, Harvey had prided himself on running a school that was more than just a place for academics. It was a haven, a community where students could grow and thrive, but now that dream seemed to crumble before his eyes. The source of his trouble was clear: Jake Lester. Jake had always been a charismatic boy. He had a natural charm that could win over adults and peers alike, but underneath that charisma was a streak of cruelty. Over time, his antics had grown darker. What began as harmless pranks turned into targeted bullying, and soon Jake had assembled a gang of like-minded boys, large, intimidating, and fiercely loyal. Together, they ruled the school with fear as their weapon. They extorted money, humiliated weaker students, and meted out violent punishments to anyone who dared challenge them. Harvey had dealt with difficult students before, but Jake was different. The boy thrived on control, manipulating teachers and students alike. The thought of calling the police had crossed Harvey's mind more than once, but he knew the damage it would do to the school's reputation. Worse, he feared it would only escalate the situation. Then there was Lily Matthews, a bright, quiet girl who embodied everything Harvey hoped his students could become. Lily was kind, diligent, and unassuming, but her very nature made her an easy target for Jake. Over the past month, Harvey had watched the spark in her eyes dim. She no longer lingered in hallways to chat with friends or volunteered in class. Instead, she moved like a ghost, always looking over her shoulder. Harvey felt powerless. He had tried speaking with Jake's parents, but they dismissed their son's behavior as boys being boys. Meetings with teachers and staff yielded no solutions, and his warnings to Jake himself were met with smirks and defiance. Harvey knew he was out of his depth, and it gnawed at him. In a moment of desperation, Harvey reached for an old address book he kept in a locked drawer. His fingers hovered over a name he hadn't thought about in years: Samantha Blake. They had worked together briefly in the past, and he remembered her as someone who could cut through problems like a knife through butter. She had left behind a decorated career in the military to work in private security, and Harvey couldn't think of anyone better equipped to handle a problem like Jake Lester. With a deep breath, he dialed the number. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Harvey Sloan," Samantha said, her tone warm but slightly teasing. "It's been years. What's going on?" "Sam," Harvey began, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "I need your help. It's the school. We've got a situation." Her tone shifted instantly. "Tell me everything." Harvey poured out the whole story, sparing no detail. When he finished, there was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Samantha spoke, her voice firm and steady. "I'll be there in an hour." True to her word, less than an hour later, a sleek, red Porsche pulled into the school parking lot. Samantha stepped out, her movements purposeful and confident. She was smaller than Harvey remembered, but her presence filled the space around her. Her dark hair was tied back neatly, and her sharp eyes scanned the campus as though assessing a battlefield. Inside the office, Samantha extended her hand to Harvey. "It's been too long," she said with a small smile, but her gaze quickly shifted to the papers strewn across his desk. "You weren't exaggerating, were you?" "Not even a little," Harvey admitted, motioning for her to sit. "I wouldn't have called you if I wasn't at the end of my rope." He outlined the situation again, this time including the incidents that hadn't made it into reports. The whispered stories from students too afraid to come forward, the bruises hidden under long sleeves, the laughter that had vanished from the hallways. Samantha listened intently, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she leaned back in her chair. "All right, here's how we're going to do this. Introduce me as a new staff member, security consultant, maybe someone brought in to address recent concerns about safety. I'll keep a low profile at first. Observe the dynamics and figure out how Jake operates. Once I have a handle on things, I'll step in." Harvey nodded, though unease lingered in his eyes. "Sam, Jake's dangerous. He's not just some punk kid. He knows how to manipulate people, and he won't back down easily." She gave him a reassuring smile. "Harvey, I've faced worse than a teenage bully. Trust me." The next morning, Samantha arrived at the school, dressed in business casual attire, carrying a clipboard and wearing a badge that marked her as a safety consultant. Most students barely noticed her, too absorbed in their own routines. But Samantha noticed everything. She spent the day observing, stationing herself near the cafeteria during lunch, walking through hallways between classes, and listening carefully to snippets of conversation. It didn't take long for her to spot Jake. He sat at the center of a lunch table, surrounded by his usual crew. His laughter was loud and deliberate, meant to draw attention. Nearby, a group of younger boys sat with their heads down, flinching every time Jake's gaze swept in their direction. Samantha's eyes shifted to Lily, who sat alone near the window. Her shoulders were hunched, and she pushed food around her tray without taking a bite. The sight tightened something in Samantha's chest. She made a mental note to approach Lily later. The first confrontation came sooner than expected. Between classes, Samantha watched from a distance as Jake cornered Lily near her locker. He leaned against the metal door, his posture casual but menacing. "You owe me, Matthews," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Don't pretend you don't know the rules." I don't have anything," Lily stammered, clutching her books tightly to her chest. Jake smirked. "Then maybe I'll just take that necklace." "Enough." Samantha's voice cut through the hallway like a whip. Jake turned, startled, his smirk faltering as he saw her standing there. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. Samantha took a step closer, her gaze unwavering. "Someone who doesn't tolerate cowards." The tension in the hallway was palpable. Jake's friends exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to intervene. For a moment, it looked like Jake might retaliate. But something in Samantha's tone, something unshakable, made him back down. He muttered something under his breath and walked away, his crew trailing behind him. Samantha turned to Lily, her expression softening. "Are you all right?" Lily nodded, though her hands still trembled. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't have to thank me," Samantha said gently. "But you do need to stand up for yourself. I can help you with that if you're willing." Lily hesitated, but eventually nodded. Over the next week, Samantha worked closely with Lily. After school, they met in the gym, where Samantha taught her basic self-defense techniques. At first, Lily was hesitant, her movements awkward and unsure, but Samantha was patient, guiding her through each step with steady encouragement. "You're stronger than you think," Samantha told her one afternoon. "The trick isn't just physical strength. It's about knowing you have the right to stand your ground." As the days passed, Lily began to change. She stood a little taller, spoke with more confidence, and even managed to laugh with her friends again. Samantha watched the transformation with quiet pride, though she knew the battle wasn't over yet. Jake wouldn't let go of his power so easily. Sure enough, the pushback came one evening. Samantha was walking to her car when Jake and 3 of his friends appeared from the shadows of the parking lot. They moved as a unit, their intent clear. You think you can just come in here and mess with how things work? Jake sneered, his hands stuffed in his pockets. This is my school. Samantha's face remained calm. Your school? Funny, I didn't see your name on the sign. Jake's smirk turned into a scowl, and he took a threatening step forward. You don't scare me. Samantha tilted her head slightly, her expression almost amused. I'm not trying to scare you, Jake. I'm giving you a choice. Walk away now or learn what it feels like to lose. Jake's temper snapped. He lunged at her, but Samantha moved with practiced precision. She sidestepped his attack, grabbing his wrist and twisting it behind his back in one fluid motion. Before he could react, she had him pinned against a car. His friends froze, their bravado crumbling in the face of her skill. You're done here, Samantha said, her voice low and firm. You're going to leave Lily alone. You're going to stop terrorizing this school, and if you don't, I'll make sure you face consequences you can't talk your way out of. Do you understand? Jake gritted his teeth, but nodded. When she released him, he stumbled back, his eyes wide with a mixture of fury and fear. Without another word, he and his friends fled into the night. Word of the encounter spread quickly through the school. By the next morning, Jake's reign of terror was over. His crew dissolved, and he avoided confrontation, his confidence shattered. Meanwhile, Lily's transformation continued to inspire others. Students who had once felt powerless began to speak up, forming a support network that made Harrison High feel safe again. When Samantha's time at the school came to an end, Lily sought her out. I don't know how to thank you, the girl said, her voice trembling with emotion. Samantha smiled, pulling her into a brief hug. The strength was always in you, Lily. I just helped you see it. As she drove away, Samantha glanced in the rearview mirror, the school fading into the distance. A sense of satisfaction settled over her. Harrison High was no longer a place ruled by fear. It had become a place of resilience, proof that even the darkest storms could be weathered with courage, guidance, and the unyielding belief in the power of change.